the emotional torment of trying to answer the question, who am I? It's a journey. And it took me 10 years almost to be able to answer that question and not be tormented by this question. And I found it in the opposite way that I was expecting. And I want to share the way that I found it. I know this is a question that torments you if you clicked on this video. And first of all, I'm sorry that you're going through that. It's really intense in a way that's hard to explain to people because it's existential. Let's get into it. I want to share my story, my journey, all the way from when I was 17 to 28 now. So when I was 17, I was gaining a lot of self-awareness, as one hopefully does at that age, and I was questioning my identity because I was sort of splitting it a lot from my parents and the identity that they wanted me to have. And I'm really grateful for them that they respected who I wanted to become, even though it, wasn't in alignment with their beliefs, because they were, and are very Catholic, and I just felt myself pulling and tearing away from that in a way that I just could no longer deny. The thing is, I pulled away from who I knew I wasn't, but I didn't know who I was now, and thus the void came upon me, and it wasn't just about religion, it was about who I was as a whole. Like, once I hit 17, this huge self-awareness just exploded, and then all of a sudden I was like, wait, who am I? And with that question always comes what's my purpose? What am I meant to do here on earth? What's my personality? What do I believe in? What do I do? What are my hobbies and things? And I also started asking myself these questions about identity that went really, really deep. Do I have a soul? What is my identity underneath my personality, underneath what I do, underneath my purpose here even? What is that? And does that even exist? It was a lot to try and answer. And it was really painful. It was really painful to ask myself these questions and not know, because it was really paralyzing, if you don't know who you are, you don't know what to do with yourself. And that's where I was at, unfortunately. And I do think that when you don't know how to answer that question, you can get yourself into some trouble in life. And that sure did for me, honestly. I was definitely getting into some things that were not good for me and were risky. And, as one does as a teenager, but I think part of that was because I felt lost and I was just looking for anything to make me feel alive, feel something. Because I was just floating through the existential void at that time. And it was depressing. I was going through a really intense depression, and I think that the anguish that comes with trying to answer that question is something that commonly comes when depression pops up. During this time, I was very isolated. I had split up with my best friend since childhood. I was having a disconnect with my parents. I just didn't have that many friends, and the friends that I did have, I was distancing myself from. And I actually, I could have had a lot of friends if I didn't distance myself from them so much. But nonetheless, I was very alone. I was locked up in my room listening to existential music a lot. I was listening to the deeper Mac Miller songs. I was listening to electronic music just wondering why I'm going through this intense existential sorrow and not even knowing what to do with it. I've never experienced something this intense. Then I found Alan Watts. Love that man to this day. He is no longer alive. He was super popular in the 70s. He shared Eastern philosophy from Taoism and Hinduism and translated it into a language that Westerners such as ourselves in America could understand on a cultural level, and literally translating the language. If you don't know who he is, I would maybe think about like Ram Dass, very similar. So sharing like these interesting messages about our oneness with the universe, and there's this absence of belief in God or a higher power, but this deep peace and okayness with that. And honestly, that is exactly what I needed at that time, because I just could not find any faith. But I needed some peace with life, you know, even despite having no answers. And it made perfect sense to me at the time, because Alan Watts describes this life as an illusion or a dream, which aligned with how I felt. I felt empty. But he says that it's beautiful and it's perfect the way it is, even though from our human level, obviously there are unacceptable, horrible things that happen here. And yet it's all okay when you, you know, if you could see it from like an above perspective. This was really something to just pull me out of a complete dark tunnel that had no light at the end. This philosophy for me just gave me a sense of peace with where I was at. And from there, I got into a lot of hippy-dippy things. I got into crystals, I got into like tarot cards, and that led me indirectly to a music festival. And this music festival was a lot of very free-spirited, hippy-dippy kind of people. They were very into creativity. They were very into self-expression. They very much valued community and being friendly to each other and generosity. And everyone was so welcoming to me. And by the end of the weekend, I was dancing, I was sharing all the things that I had and just connecting with people on such a deep level and having conversations that validated who I was. And that weekend was the time that I started to get a glimpse of who I was, because I had finally found other people who are like me, who were like who I was at the time. And I think that is my first key and my first wisdom for you, is to find people who are like you. When you get to see people who are like you, you get to look at yourself. It is impossible to turn your eyeballs around and look at yourself on an emotional, existential, and literal level. But when you get to witness and see someone else be themselves that is like you, there's that immediate existential recognition, like, oh, that is me. And it is so validating. That's why we love our friends so much, because it's like looking in a mirror and getting to see the beauty of ourselves. Or maybe the ugliness too, who knows? But nonetheless, it will give you that answer. Now, since my music festival experience, I really went down that rabbit hole of the hippy-dippy things, of manifesting, of tarot. Was still very into like Buddhist philosophy and Alan Watts, and the New Age spirituality community is very eclectic, so there was a lot of different things involved. Ultimately, I think my sense of clarity about who I was came from getting to know my friends that I met through that community, being able to talk to them about things and agree on philosophies and connect on a heart level was just amazing. It was me getting to know myself. And after that, I took it a step further and I started to find a sense of purpose. And it was in the most opposite way that I would have thought. It wasn't anything to do with focusing on my interests or what I think would be best for me or learning about who I am or anything. Which is funny because most people associate who am I and my purpose very intimately together. But I want to share that I don't think that's often the case. I think that our purpose often has to do with surrendering who we are and being selfless. A lot of people find their purpose in having a kid. And of course, having a kid requires you to be extremely selfless about what you want and focus on what the kid needs and wants. And that's exactly what I did when I got a job in the psychology field working for kids with autism. I didn't have a kid. I was finding selflessness and surrendering my needs and my interests and my wants for 8 hours a day when I was working and just focusing on how could I help this child. And the more that I gave up my personal needs and personal feelings and all these things and just focused on what was best for them in every moment, it was so fulfilling and so freeing. Like, it's so freeing to just give up the existential load of trying to find out who you are, like, just for a second, you know? Like, I think it's healthy. It's a healthy way to just get away from that. And ironically, in completely surrendering who you are to focus on a purpose and a cause, you might find something out about yourself, you know? I found out through that job that I can be incredibly perceptive on a psychological level. And I found that I am able to be selfless. I don't think I've ever been that selfless in my life before. Yeah, it was a backwards way to find who I am. Just surrender who you are to a cause, you know? And when I say to a cause, I mean a real world hurt and need, like whether that be, you know, like volunteering or doing a job that serves humanity, you know, like serve humanity, dude. Like, if you're lost and you don't know who you are, go connect with humanity. You'll find out something about who you are, you know, because we're all human. So that would be my second wisdom for you, is to lose yourself to a real world human purpose, even if it's really small, you know. Now, after I left this job, I moved to Oregon and became very isolated from the friends that I used to have and just people in general. And I kind of fell into an existential confusion again about who I am and what's my purpose. And I want you to know that that's completely normal. It's really common and really typical to have to rediscover your purpose, because things change, you know. Maybe your purpose was caring for someone who passed away or a job that came to an end, you know, like, it changes. And so we'll, you know, ask ourselves that question again, but hopefully we'll know how to find our way and know that sometimes we are living in a transition of purpose, and that's okay, you know. Like, just because we're kind of at a loss of why we're here, it's all right. We got to transition somehow. And I just, invite you to remain open. That's my third wisdom for you, is just remain open, because I found my purpose in places that I never, ever would have seen myself doing. Like, literally had nothing to do with my personality or desires or wishes at the time at all. But if there is a God up there, I do believe that whatever it is, sending me these things somehow and pushing me through it. I think that, sorry, I'm gonna get emotional because I just think it's like beautiful, and I just feel it in my heart sometimes, you know what I mean? It's just something so personal to me to be so lost and confused, and then on top of that, dragged into like difficult circumstances where I have to make difficult decisions. But those difficult decisions that I didn't even want to make ultimately led to what I was searching for. So be open. If you feel like life is dragging you around, it might be trying to drag you somewhere that you need to be, So yeah, those are my wisdoms for you. It's a journey, you guys. It's okay if you have to like find your purpose a few times. Just be open to all the ways. All right, so just to give you a little recap, is number 1, connect with people who reflect you and seek them out and make that conscious effort to try and find them, because they are somewhere out there in the world for you and they need you too. And secondly, and also ironically, try to consider seeking out something that is more selfless and more focused on serving others or serving humanity. In doing that, you get to connect on a deeper level with someone else, and that deeper connection, it does reflect who you are. And lastly, I would just invite you to be open. Our identity comes from mysterious places, and if we're feeling lost about who we are, it's probably gonna come from an unexpected source. So I just invite you to remember that if you don't know, you gotta be open-minded. Alright guys, well thank you so much for watching, and I have one final thought for you. If you're lost in the existential sauce searching for your purpose, I want you to know and I want you to believe that there is something on the way for you. If you are asking and you are lost, I have faith something's coming, and I think that if you remain open and you remain looking, you will find that. And whether you want to take that as something that is spiritual or just like basic laws of reality, if you keep searching and remain open, you will find. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, I would love if you commented and tell me what your thoughts are, just in general, or what your favorite part was or something. It really means a lot to me, and it really energizes me and makes me want to keep creating. So yeah, thank you. Bye. I also, hello? It's a duck. Look at that. Look, there he is. Hi. Oh, he's taking a bath. Oh, I've never seen that species of duck before.